Redditors, what's the most metal thing you've ever seen? Steve Owen wrestles a croc back into the river, stands up and looks at his hand. Crikey, I dislocated my finger. Grabs his finger and pops it back into place, then double takes. Wait, never mind. It's broken. Steve was something else, man, lol. I watched an epic fight between a spider wasp and a huntsman spider. It went on for about 10 minutes and was like a kind of mini Godzilla, King of the Monsters vibe. It ended with the spider wasp winning and dragging the spider back into a big hole in my garden wall. It was freaking intense. Australian wildlife is metal AF. You need to film that kinda crap and put it on YouTube. I'd sub to your channel so fast. Didn't see this firsthand, but my dad's friend told us about one time when his dog chased a bear up a tree. In a dog versus bear fight, the bear would win every time, but they tend to be pretty timid, so this dog treed it. The guy calls his dog back into the house, but before leaving, the dog pees on the tree with the bear in it. Super ballsy on the dog's part. That's what we call a power move. There was an article about a murderer who threw gasoline on his victim and proceeded to light her up in an effort to shut her up for good. She dragged him into the flames to burn with her. My boss drilled into his hand when a bit slipped, got his knife out, picked the filings of steel that got into his hand, got the alcohol and poured it over, slapped crazy glue to close the gap and drove to the hospital. The crazy part is that his face never changed, no emotion at all. The line between metal and farmer is a thin one indeed. I didn't witness it directly, but it absolutely qualifies. A few months back my friend noticed his 18-year-old cat seemed sick, just really lethargic, and seemed to have a small wound bump on his tail. He kept an eye on him for a day or two, seeing if he was going to have to take him into the vet. 2 days later, the cat buffs up a dead black widow spider and legitimately went back to normal after and cleaned his tail wound himself and it healed. This freaking cat was bit by a black widow and then ate it and came out completely fine. So metal. Birthed in gasoline in a junkyard for sure. At the time I was a CT tech at a major trauma hospital. Patient comes with gunshot wound to forehead self-inflicted with a .22 caliber. They were alert and orientated and following directions but kept trying to put their finger in the hole. They were surprised there was a hole in their forehead. I used to have a basset hound and a tiny cow-looking chihuahua. Basset hounds have a nose and a desire to hunt. One time a hawk came down, trying to carry away the chihuahua. As it swooped, it didn't get a chance to grab the tiny cow because my basset caught its neck, brought it to the ground, and started methodically breaking all its bones by running its jaw up and down the hawk's body until it laid there dying, unable to move. My dog won't even eat other animals, it just hunts. I worked at a music venue downtown in my city. Every Saturday was a mix of punk rockers and metalheads who came down for 80s night. This disheveled dude stumbled in and walks up to the bar. He, long greasy hair, a bloodied busted lip with 2 matching black eyes, reeking of whiskey and a bad attitude. Me, 6 hours into a PBR drinker's shift with a tip bucket full of change and the occasional dollar. He orders a PBR and hands me a $10. I give him a $5 and 2 singles. I go to turn to the cooler to grab his drink and he yells something along the lines of, "Where's the rest of my freaking money?" I snap back, tell him he gave me a $10, and turned the till to show him the empty $20 spot. We didn't keep large dollars in the register because we dealt in pocket change for $3 tall boys and $5 40s. As I go to grab the register and turn it back towards myself, ignoring his demand for money, I feel the dang thing slip between my fingers as I watch this freaking fool lift it over his head. I hear people yelling as they realize what's about to happen, while I drop behind the bar in hopes he doesn't bash my brains. In a matter of seconds, I hear the most animalistic growl and heave as I watch the sucker toss the register over my head, flying right into the glass bar. This was the mother of all oddly satisfying sounds. A giant bar mirror with 6 glass shelves, 50 plus glass bottles of liquor and assorted beer breaking into bits and raining down all around me. In the darkness the neon lights shining through the glass mimicking sparklers shooting out of the wall where an entire bar stood a moment earlier. It all happened in a minute, feeling like an eternity. Then it all ended swiftly as the bouncers moved in, picking this guy up over their heads, throw him down 2 staircases, toss him out the door and beat the dog crap out of him. It was just another Cincinnati Saturday night. Cincinnati. It ain't glamorous but goddamn does it got personality. My grandpa survived 3 brain tumors. They removed large parts of his brain, though, and he had multiple grand mal, IDK how to spell, seizures. He averaged almost 1 seizure a day if I recall correctly. Regular treatment wasn't really working, so his amazing surgeon guy put electrodes in his brain that stopped the seizures for a good 7 months. My grandpa was a cyborg for a short amount of time. That, and he was given up as a kid, tortured because his parents abandoned him to a state school, where they electrocuted him because they misdiagnosed him with autism. He was called in for the draft for Vietnam pretty much as soon as he was able. They rejected him for his mental health background, to which he stubbornly said frick you I am enlisting, and he said Vietnam was easier than his childhood in a lot of ways. He spent his life advocating for autistic rights. If you don't believe me, they wrote a book about him. You'll like it here by Ed Orzechowski, again spelling IDK if that's right. My grandpa was a Vietnam veteran cyborg who fought for autistic rights. I loved that man so much. Punk rock, not metal. Big kids were getting kicked out of a show by security for stage diving, and the band stopped their set to invite everyone on stage to sing with them. Cause you can't kick out everyone. I can't remember the band for sure, but I wanna say it was Rancid. That sounds very punk rock. Ramstein at the Metro in Chicago for $5 in the summer of 1998. Old lady I used to take care of. She was an aircraft mechanic in her youth during World War II. She fought me tooth and nail every time I went in to help her. One day in the dining room she fell out of her wheelchair and busted her head wide open. She was 95. Blood everywhere. This lady stands up, blood running down her face. We rushed to help her. She looked me dead in the face and said frick off. I don't need any help. We called an ambulance. My grandma, 70 years old at the time, messed up her elbow one day doing something in the yard. She comes up to me. I'm like 9 at this point, and she casually says call your mom with her arm dangling awkwardly at the elbow. I freaked the heck out. She fixed herself a tea while we waited for my mom, reassuring me the whole time. She passed in January, just 1 day shy of her 90th. Badass. One of my friends has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Far worse than myself. I remember once her foot fell out from under her on a staircase. She slipped down and ended up a curled and contorted mess, having dislocated both shoulders and twisted her legs underneath her. Before I could even get down the stairs and help, she started popping her joints back in and untangling herself. It was like watching a marionette build itself from a pile of parts. Either truly metal or nightmare fodder. My sister has EDS. The phrase I dislocated my shoulder, but I popped it back in, so I'm okay has been said far more frequently than any 13-year-old should have to say. There's a whale autopsy video where the whale is paraded through a town and then basically explodes because of built-up gas. That was pretty metal. Right here on Reddit, a decapitated wasp picked up its head and flew away. Turning off the highway onto a road that leads into a small country town, there was a deer carcass rotting underneath the sun that was likely the result of a vehicle hit. Feasting on the corpse was a bald eagle, with its beak stained red from his free meal. I slowed down to observe, and he spread his wings out as if to show his dominance. Once in a lifetime sight. I've heard that any non-American observers of such events gain citizenship immediately, and anyone who is already a citizen becomes president. My aunt got a radioactive seed implanted in her liver as part of last case scenario cancer treatment. It had to be transported in a huge lead box. Her bed had lead plates on them that were like walls. None of us could touch her or sit near her because she was radioactive. She didn't get any superpowers, which sucked, but her attitude throughout is what made it really metal to me. When things are bad enough that having a radioactive seed implanted inside your body is a good idea, then things are pretty dang bad. She had a 50% chance of dying 24 hours after having it implanted. She found out a little while later that it didn't work. Her words when she came out of the room after being told she was terminal were, "Welp, that's me stuffed, isn't it? I miss her." Was at a Slayer concert and saw a man crowd surfing on a wheelchair. That's a very bad idea. You'll lose your wheelchair. Source: I had to find my wheelchair after the show at a Ministry concert. When I was a kid we were out riding our bikes around in summer break. I saw some of the older high school kids come hauling ass around the corner on the back streets of my town in a VW Bug and rolled it. Passenger window was open and no seat belts. Passenger got ejected, flew about 10 feet through the air ass over tea kettle and landed on his feet. The Bug had rolled back onto its wheels and he gave us a thumbs up and jumped back in the car and they drove off. Blew my freaking grade school mind. It was cooler than anything I ever saw on Dukes of Hazzard. When I was younger, maybe 16, this young kid walks up to me all angry, slapped my smoothie to the ground and walks away. No words, just eye contact and a man on a mission. I'll find you one of these days, Austin. Austin is in Texas. Shot myself in the thumb with a 16-penny nail from a nail gun. The metal part was when I removed it with a pair of vice grips. As it scraped across my bone, I passed out. I learned the meaning of when the bullet hits the bone. My dad is the most timid Christian man in the world. Few years back we were hanging out Christmas lights and setting the yard decorations out. My parents have a metal framed nativity scene with the whole gang, 3 kings, and the others, animals, etc. It's a bee to put together. My dad ended up so frazzled he took a pole from it and just started to beat the crap out of baby Jesus. This resulted in a beloved story told annually about how dad brutally murdered baby Jesus. It's always the quiet ones. 2 lines of angry bikers on a 4-lane road having created a road crossing for a family of moose. Bikers weren't actually angry, and my dad was among them. It was his biker club. No backpatch, no selling of drugs, just a bunch of friendly guys who like to ride motorcycles. I was 5 at the time. We were in Norway. Extra metal part at the end as Moose Dad decided that a pair of extra tall handlebars on a motorcycle was a challenger to his authority. The rider was the club longboard. He essentially looked like a biker Santa Claus. He revved his bike. Moose Dad begins roaring back until the motor noise gets big enough for him to run. I'm starting to think Norway is the most metal country on earth. Me and a buddy of mine were mid-crowd at a Dragon Force show in 2005. We were helping people get up for crowd surfing, and it had been about 15 minutes at this point. My friend looks at me and says, "Well, I gotta go. It's my turn now," and without even saying anything, he makes a Superman pose and the guy's right in front of us. Without saying anything, just boost him up and he is passed to the front in that pose. Hilarious. Another time, Bill Kelleher of Mastodon was flicking his picks into the crowd at the end of a show and one hit me in the eye and got stuck. That's how I earned one of my concert picks. I was beaten by a mob in order to get a drumstick from Rob Zombie. Suckers nearly broke my ribs. I saw a falcon attack a squirrel's nest and it kept going back for the babies, tearing them apart, then throwing them to the ground. Then the parent squirrel jumped at the falcon and it literally tore the poor thing's head clean off and its headless body fell to its mangled children. Yeah, wrap this thread up. We're done here. Had an inmate slice his arm open with a razor before swallowing it. While we waited for backup he calmly sprayed blood all over the cell and counted. Then, when he'd lost enough blood he tore a strip off of his shirt, tied it around his arm to stop the blood loss and cuffed up. Dude was just a bit crazy. Swallowing it, a bit crazy yet. One time I was at the food library and this dude just pushed his forehead against the glass of the deli case until it broke. Then he reached his hand in and grabbed some sausages and walked away. Absolutely brutal. I guess I'll be the guy to pretend to be shocked you said food library instead of supermarket. You have been visited by the Shibe of big time depression. You will be blessed with good prospects and a healthy state of mind, but only if you comment, maintain good diet, sleep and exercise habits. Papa, if you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.